Naomi is a 20-year-old nursing student living in poverty, juggling school and multiple jobs to care for her seriously ill grandfather. On a stormy night, while delivering food to earn money for his medication, she finds a wealthy elderly woman collapsed at a bus station from a heart attack. Naomi drops everything and walks the woman home through the rain. But when they arrive, security and police suspect her, search her belongings, and nearly arrest her, believing she's trying to take advantage of a rich old woman. No one believes Naomi until the woman speaks up, and that moment leads to an unexpected act of help that completely changes Naomi's life. Before we go back, let us know where you're watching from, and subscribe, because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. The alarm went off at 4:47 a.m. Naomi didn't hit snooze. She never did. There wasn't time for that luxury. She sat up in the narrow bed, her body protesting every movement. The mattress sagged in the middle, had been sagging for 2 years now, but replacing it wasn't even on the list of things she could afford to think about. Her feet touched the cold linoleum floor, and she reached for the hoodie draped over the chair. The apartment was always cold in the mornings. The radiator worked when it felt like it, which wasn't often. The studio apartment she shared with her grandfather was small enough that she could see everything from where she sat. The kitchenette with its chipped countertop, the card table they used for meals, Grandpa Walter's bed against the far wall, where she could hear his labored breathing even from here. That sound, that wet rattling sound, had become the soundtrack of her life. She stood up, pulling the hoodie over her tank top, and walked the few steps to the kitchenette. The coffee maker was older than she, was a wedding gift her grandmother had gotten back in the 70s. It made terrible coffee, but it made it cheap, and cheap was all that mattered. While the coffee brewed, Naomi pulled out the pill organizer. Monday morning. She'd filled it last night, but she double-checked anyway. She always double-checked. 1 for blood pressure, she whispered to herself, counting them into her palm. 2 for the heart, 1 for breathing, 1 metformin. The orange prescription bottles lined up on the counter like soldiers. She picked up the one for his heart medication and shook it. Maybe 10 pills left. The refill was due in 3 days, but the insurance company was still reviewing whether they'd cover the full amount this month. They did this every few months, found some reason to kick the claim back, make her submit more paperwork, talk to more people who clearly didn't care whether an old man got his medication or not. She set the pills aside and reached for the stack of envelopes wedged between the coffee maker and the wall. Bill. Final notice. She didn't need to open them to know what they said. Rent was due in 5 days. They were already 2 weeks late on the electric. The collection agency had called twice yesterday about the ambulance ride from 3 months ago. Naomi pressed her palm against her forehead. She'd done the math last night lying awake in bed. If she picked up 2 extra shifts at the diner this week, and her Tuesday paycheck from the hospital cleaning job came through on time, she could cover rent. Maybe. Probably. The electric would have to wait. Again, the coffee maker sputtered its final hiss. She poured herself a cup black, no sugar, because they were out of both milk and sugar, and took a sip. It tasted like hot water that had once met a coffee bean in passing. Perfect. She heard him before she saw him. That cough. Deep and wet, like his lungs were trying to turn themselves inside out. Grandpa, don't get up yet. Naomi crossed the small space, quickly setting her coffee down. Let me help you. Walter Brooks was already sitting on the edge of his bed, one hand pressed against his chest, trying to suppress the coughing. He was a big man once she'd seen the pictures, seen him in his shipyard uniform, shoulders broad enough to carry steel beams. Now he looked like someone had let the air out of him. His pajamas hung loose. His hands shook as he reached for the inhaler on the nightstand. I'm all right, baby girl. His voice came out rough, scraped raw. Just need a minute. She knelt in front of him anyway, her hands on his knees, waiting until the coughing subsided. His breathing evened out, but it never sounded quite right. Not anymore. You take your evening pills, she asked, even though she knew he had. She'd watched him. Every single one. He managed to smile, and for just a second she could see the man he used to be. Got myself a nurse for a granddaughter. Can't get away with nothing. Not a nurse yet, Naomi corrected, standing up. Still got 2 more years. You'll get there. He said it with such certainty, like it was a fact written in stone somewhere. You're the smartest person I know. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. But smart didn't pay for rent. Smart didn't make the pills appear when the insurance company decided to play games. Smart didn't add hours to the day. so she could work, study, and take care of him without feeling like she was drowning. "Let me make you some breakfast," she said instead, because that was something she could actually do. She moved back to the kitchenette and pulled out the bread. 4 slices left. She'd stop at the discount grocery after her shift at the diner, see what was marked down. There was a can of soup in the cabinet, chicken noodle, his favorite that she'd been saving. Maybe today was the day to use it. While the bread toasted in the ancient toaster that only worked on one side, Walter settled into the chair at the card table. He moved slowly. Each step calculated. His back hurt, always had, ever since the injury at the shipyard 20 years ago. Some days were worse than others. "You remember Tommy Richards?" Walter asked as she set the toast in front of him. No butter. They were out of that too. From the shipyard, Naomi poured him water for his morning pills. "That's the one. He called yesterday while you were at class." Walter picked up a piece of toast, studying it like it was the most interesting thing he'd ever seen. "Said the union's having a reunion thing next month. Wanted to know if I'd come." Naomi arranged his pills next to the water glass. "You should go. When's the last time you saw those guys?" 3-4 years maybe." He swallowed the first pill, then the second. "Back when I could still get around better." She heard what he didn't say. Back when he wasn't so sick. Back when the stairs to the community center wouldn't have been impossible. Back when he was still himself. "I could take you," Naomi offered, even though she had no idea how she'd make that work. "We could figure it out." Walter looked at her, really looked at her, and she had to turn away. He could always see too much. "You got enough on your plate, Naomi." His voice was gentle. "Don't need to be carting your old grandpa around to reminisce with a bunch of other old-timers." "I don't mind." "I know you don't." He reached across the table and patted her hand. His fingers were cold, the skin paper-thin. "That's the problem. You never mind. You just keep going and going like one of them battery rabbits." She laughed despite herself. "Energizer Bunny Grandpa." "That's what I said." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Through the thin walls, she could hear the neighbor's TV already blaring the morning news. Someone upstairs was taking a shower, the pipes groaning in protest. "You know what I was thinking about this morning?" Walter asked, finishing his toast. "All them marches we did back in the day, fighting for better wages, safer conditions. We believed in something believed, that if working people stuck together, looked out for each other, we could change things." Naomi gathered his empty plate. "Did it work?" "Sometimes." He stared out the small window at the gray sky beyond. "Sometimes it did. We got better pay, got benefits, got respect. But we also believed in taking care of our neighbors. If someone was struggling, the whole block would pitch in. Bring food, help with bills, watch each other's kids." He turned back to her and his eyes were sad. "Feels like we lost that somewhere along the way. Now everybody's just trying to survive on their own." Naomi didn't know what to say to that. She rinsed the plate in the sink, watching the water swirl down the drain. She thought about their neighbors, the single mom upstairs who worked 2 jobs and barely said hello. The old couple next door who kept their TV loud because they were both going deaf. The college kids across the hall who threw parties on weekends and complained about the noise when Walter coughed. Nobody looked out for each other anymore. Not really. They were all just trying to keep their heads above water. "I gotta get ready for work," Naomi said, finally drying her hands on a threadbare dish towel. "My shift starts at 6. "At the diner?" "Yeah. Then I have class at 10, and I'm back at the hospital at 3 for cleaning." Walter frowned. "That's too much, baby." "It's fine." She said it automatically now, like a reflex. "I'm fine." But she wasn't fine. She was exhausted. She was scared. She was one emergency away from everything falling apart. She went to the tiny bathroom to get ready, splashing cold water on her face because the hot water took forever to heat up, and she didn't have forever. In the spotted mirror, she looked older than 20. The bags under her eyes had bags. Her hair needed washing, but that would have to wait until tomorrow. She thought about her classmates at the community college, most of them fresh out of high school, complaining about homework and arguing about where to go on spring break. They had no idea what it was like to calculate whether you could afford to eat lunch or if that $3 needed to go toward bus fare. No idea what it was like to fall asleep during a lecture because you'd worked a double shift the night before. When she came out of the bathroom, Walter was still sitting at the table. He'd turned on the small radio news about a storm coming up the coast. Something about the economy, the usual litany of problems that seemed far away from their small apartment. "You be careful out there," he said as she pulled on her jacket. The zipper was broken, but it still kept out most of the cold. "Always am." She kissed his forehead. His skin felt too warm. She made a mental note to check his temperature when she got home. "You need anything, you call Mrs. Chen next door, okay?" "I know the drill, Nurse Naomi." She shouldered her backpack, textbooks, her work uniform, a granola bar she'd been saving for later. At the door, she paused and looked back at him. "Love you, Grandpa." "Love you too, baby girl. More than you know." She stepped out into the hallway, pulling the door shut behind her. The lock stuck, it always did, and she had to jiggle the key 3 times before it caught. 4:47 in the morning. The building was mostly quiet except for the sounds of other people starting their own difficult days. Somewhere a baby cried, somewhere else a couple argued in Spanish. Naomi descended the stairs, her hand on the railing, because half the lights were out. She pushed through the front door and into the pre-dawn cold. The city was waking up around her. Cars on the distant highway. The first bus of the morning rumbling past. The sky was still dark, but there was a hint of gray at the edges. She started walking. The diner was 14 blocks away. She could take the bus, but that was $1.50 each way. $3 a day, $15 a week, $60 a month. $60 that could go toward pills or rent or food. So she walked. By the time Naomi reached the diner, her hands were numb and her nose was running. She pushed through the glass door, and the blast of warm air mixed with coffee and frying bacon hit her like a wall. "You're late," Rita called from behind the counter. She was the morning manager, 50-something, permanently tired. Naomi checked the clock on the wall. 5:58 a.m. 2 minutes early, actually. Smart ass. But Rita was almost smiling. "Get changed. Section 3 is yours. We got a breakfast rush coming." Naomi ducked into the back, shoved her backpack into her locker, and tied on her apron. Her shift started now. Class started at 10. She had exactly 4 hours to make as much in tips as possible, then run 6 blocks to campus without being late. The calculation was already running in her head. If she got 3 tables an hour, averaged $4 in tips per table, didn't take a break, she might clear $45. $45 closer to rent. $45 closer to staying afloat one more week. She grabbed her order pad and pushed back through the swinging door into the dining room. Another day. Another set of impossible math. The morning shift at the diner ended at 9:30. Naomi had exactly 30 minutes to get to campus for her 10 o'clock Fundamentals of Nursing class. She didn't have 30 minutes. Table 6 had stiffed her on the tip. Table 12's credit card got declined twice. And Mr. Patterson at Table 3, a regular who came in every Monday for scrambled eggs and wheat toast, had a heart episode right there in the booth. She'd stayed with him until the ambulance came, holding his hand, checking his pulse, doing exactly what her training had taught her. The paramedics said she probably saved his life. Her manager said she needed to clock out on time, or it was coming out of her paycheck. By the time she made it to the bus stop, she'd missed the 9:35. The next one wouldn't come for 15 minutes. She couldn't wait 15 minutes. So she ran. Her backpack slammed against her spine with every step. Her feet screamed in the cheap canvas sneakers that were supposed to last another 3 months. But she ran anyway, cutting through alleys, dodging morning traffic, her breath coming in sharp gasps. She made it to the community college at 10:07. Professor Miller had already started the lecture. Naomi slipped into the back row, trying not to make noise. Every head in the room turned anyway. She felt their eyes on her, the girl who was always late, always exhausted, always just barely hanging on. "Nice of you to join us, Miss Brooks." Professor Miller didn't look up from her notes. "Sorry, Take your seat." Naomi sat. Her hands were shaking. From the running or the stress or the fact that she hadn't eaten anything except that granola bar at 5 a.m., she wasn't sure. Probably all 3. She pulled out her notebook and tried to focus. Professor Miller was talking about patient assessment vital signs, the importance of documentation. Naomi knew all this already. She'd read the chapter twice last week during her breaks at the hospital. But she copied down the notes anyway, her handwriting getting sloppier as her hand cramped. Next to her, Ashley Chen was doodling in her notebook margins. Pretty little flowers and swirls. Ashley was 19, lived in the dorms, and had mentioned last week that her parents were paying for everything, tuition, books, meal plan, the whole deal. She was taking 4 classes this semester because Naomi, quote, 5 just seemed like too much, you know. Naomi was taking 6 classes while working 50 hours a week. She looked back down at her notes and realized she'd written the same sentence 3 times. She was so tired her brain had stopped processing information. "All right, I'm handing back last week's quizzes," Professor Miller announced. Papers rustled as students passed them back row by row. When Naomi's reached her, she almost didn't want to look. A 94, written in red pen at the top, and underneath, "Excellent work. See me after class." Relief flooded through her, followed immediately by dread. "See me after class" was never good news. The next hour crawled by. Naomi's eyelids kept drooping. Twice she caught herself nodding off, jerking awake when her chin hit her chest. The third time, Ashley elbowed her. "You okay?" Ashley whispered. "Fine." Naomi whispered back. She wasn't fine. She was running on 4 hours of sleep and burnt diner coffee. Her stomach was eating itself. She had another 5-hour shift at the hospital in less than 4 hours, and she still needed to stop by the financial aid office during lunch. Finally, mercifully, class ended. "Ms. Brooks, a word," Professor Miller called as everyone filed out. Naomi approached the desk like she was walking to her execution. Professor Miller was in her 50s with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and reading glasses that always seemed to be sliding down her nose. She taught like a drill sergeant, but graded fairly. Naomi respected her even when she was terrified of her. "That was an excellent quiz," Miller said, tapping the paper. "Top score in the class." "Thank you. You're one of my strongest students. Always have been." Miller looked at her over those sliding glasses. "Which is why I'm confused about why you haven't applied for the RN Bridge Program scholarship yet." Naomi's stomach sank. "I've been meaning to. The deadline is in 3 weeks." "I know. It's a full ride, Naomi. 4-year nursing program at the state university, tuition books, living stipend, everything." "I know. So why haven't you applied?" "Because the application was 15 pages long. Because it required 3 essays, 2 letters of recommendation, and an in-person interview. Because she was already working every spare minute she had and couldn't imagine where she'd find the time to put together a competitive application. Because she was afraid of hoping for something she probably wouldn't get." "I'll get it done," Naomi said instead. Miller studied her for a long moment. "You're working too much." "I'm managing. You fell asleep in my class 3 times." Heat flooded Naomi's face. "I'm sorry, I don't need you to apologize. I need you to take care of yourself." Miller's voice softened just slightly. "You can't help patients if you run yourself into the ground first, and you can't get into a 4-year program if you collapse before you finish your associates." "I won't collapse." Famous last words. Miller pulled out a folder and handed it to her. "Application materials. I already wrote you a recommendation letter. Professor Hughes from anatomy said he'd write one too. All you need to do is fill out the forms and write the essays." Naomi took the folder like it weighed 100 pounds. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you're good. Really good. And you deserve a shot at something better than cleaning hospital floors for minimum wage." Miller pushed her glasses up her nose. "Don't waste it." Naomi left the classroom in a daze. The folder felt heavy in her hands, full of possibility, full of hope, full of one more thing she didn't have time for. She had 15 minutes before she needed to be at the financial aid office. She found an empty bench outside and sat down, opening the folder. The application stared back at her. Essay Question 1. Describe a significant challenge you've overcome and what it taught you about resilience. She could write a book. Her phone buzzed. A text from the hospital. "Can you come in early? Sarah called out sick." Another buzz. A voicemail from the insurance company about Grandpa's medication. Another buzz. An email from the electric company. Subject line final notice. Naomi closed the folder. She'd look at it later. Maybe tonight after her hospital shift, or tomorrow morning before the diner. Or never. She stood up and headed toward the administration building. The financial aid office was on the 2nd floor, down a hallway that smelled like industrial cleaner and desperation. There was already a line. 6 students ahead of her, all looking as stressed as she felt. She checked her phone. 20 minutes until she needed to leave for the hospital. 20 minutes to figure out why her account showed she owed $480 in fees she didn't remember signing up for. The line moved slowly, very slowly. When she finally reached the window, the woman behind it looked like she'd rather be anywhere else on earth. Name, Naomi Brooks. Keys clicked. "What can I help you with?" "My account shows I owe fees, but I don't understand what they're for." More clicking. Registration fee, technology fee, lab fee, student services fee. But financial aid was supposed to covered tuition, not fees. Nobody told me about fees. The woman looked at her like she was stupid. It's in the student handbook, page 47. Okay, but how am I supposed to? You can set up a payment plan, minimum $50 a month. $50 a month. Where was she supposed to find $50 a month? If you don't pay by the start of next semester, you won't be able to register for classes. The woman continued. Next. Naomi stepped away from the window, her hands shaking again. Not from running this time, from pure, unadulterated panic. She couldn't register for classes. She couldn't continue the program. She couldn't become a nurse. She couldn't help Grandpa. She couldn't. Her phone rang. The hospital. Hello? Hey, Naomi, it's Marcus. Any chance you can start your shift now instead of 3? We're really understaffed. She looked at the time. 11:47. She hadn't eaten. She had the application folder in her bag that she needed to start working on. She had exactly 0 solutions to the $480 problem. Yeah, she heard herself say, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Because what else was she going to do? The hospital shift was supposed to end at 8. At 7:45, Naomi's supervisor told her they needed someone to cover until 10. The night cleaner had car trouble. I can't, Naomi said. I have to get home to my grandfather. 2 hours overtime, time and a half. She thought about the $480, about the 8 pills left in Grandpa's prescription bottle, about the electric bill. Fine, but I need to make a call first. She stepped outside into the parking lot and dialed Mrs. Chen. Wait, Mrs. Chen, it's Naomi. I'm so sorry to bother you, but I'm stuck at work. Can you check on my grandfather? Make sure he took his evening pills? Of course. I go now. Thank you. I owe you. You don't owe me nothing, honey. That's what neighbors do. Except most neighbors didn't do that anymore. Mrs. Chen was 76 and had known Grandpa Walter since before Naomi was born. She was the exception, not the rule. Naomi went back inside and grabbed her mop bucket. 2 more hours of mopping floors, cleaning bathrooms, emptying trash cans. Her back already hurt. Her feet already hurt. Everything already hurt. But time and a half was time and a half. By the time she finally clocked out at 10:15, she was dead on her feet. The bus had stopped running. She'd have to walk the 2 miles home. Or she could call an Uber for $12. She walked. The streets were mostly empty. A few cars passing. A couple stumbling out of a bar laughing. Naomi kept her head down and moved fast. This wasn't the worst neighborhood, but it wasn't great either. She was half a mile from home when the rain started. Not a gentle rain. A downpour that soaked through her jacket in seconds. Perfect. Just perfect. She was cutting through the alley behind the post office when she saw the cafe. Rosie's Coffee and Lunch. Still open somehow. A few people visible through the fogged-up windows. Naomi had walked past this place 1,000 times but never gone in. Too expensive. A cup of coffee there cost what she paid for a whole can of Folgers. But it was pouring, and she was soaked, and she had 15 minutes before she needed to catch the last bus that went near her apartment. She pushed through the door. The warmth hit her immediately, and the smell, coffee, fresh bread, something sweet. Baking. Her stomach growled so loud she was sure everyone heard it. The place was nearly empty. An old man reading a newspaper at the counter, a teenage couple in the corner booth holding hands across the table, and a woman sitting alone by the window. Naomi noticed her immediately because the woman looked so out of place. She was old, maybe late 70s, but dressed like she was going to the opera. Expensive-looking wool coat in deep navy, a silk scarf with some designer pattern, the kind of woman who didn't belong in a working-class neighborhood cafe at 10:30 on a Monday night. "Sit anywhere, hun," called the woman behind the counter. "Be right with you." Naomi slid into a booth near the door. She shouldn't order anything. She should just sit here for 10 minutes, get warm, and leave. But the menu was right there, and her stomach was eating itself. And when was the last time she'd had a real meal? The waitress appeared, 50-something tired eyes, a name tag that said Doris. "What can I get you?" "Just coffee, please. Black." "You want something to eat?" "Got soup. Grilled cheese. Meatloaf special." The meatloaf special was $8.95. Naomi had exactly $11 in her wallet. "Just coffee's fine." Doris looked at her for a second too long. The way you look at someone when you recognize the signs, the wet clothes, the exhaustion, the careful math happening behind the eyes. "Coffee it is." Naomi sat back and tried not to look at the old woman by the window, but it was hard not to. The The woman was breathing funny, quick, shallow breaths. Her hand shook as she lifted her coffee cup. Doris brought Naomi's coffee. "That'll be $2.50. Naomi pulled out $3. "Keep the change." "Big spender," Doris said with a wink, but it was kind, not mean. The coffee was good, really good. Naomi wrapped both hands around the mug and let the heat sink into her frozen fingers. She was halfway through the cup when she heard the crash. The old woman by the window had dropped something. Her purse had fallen to the floor, and everything had spilled out: wallet tissues, pill bottles, credit cards, coins rolling everywhere. The woman tried to bend down to get it, but couldn't manage. Her breathing was worse now, labored. Doris was in the kitchen. The old man at the counter glanced over, then went back to his newspaper. The teenage couple didn't even look up from their phones. Naomi set down her coffee and crossed the cafe. "Let me help you with that." Up close, the woman looked even more distressed. Her face was pale, almost gray. Her lips had a faint blue tinge that Naomi recognized from her nursing classes. Hypoxia. Not enough oxygen. "I'm fine," the woman said, but her voice was weak. "Just clumsy." "It's okay." Naomi knelt down and started gathering the scattered items. Wallet, expensive leather. Credit cards, platinum black card, the kind Naomi had only seen in movies. Prescription bottles, lots of them. Cardiac medications, blood thinners, nitroglycerin. Coins had rolled under nearby tables. Naomi crawled to get them counting in her head. 2 quarters, 3 dimes, 4 pennies, 1 nickel, 89 cents. Plus the bills that had fallen out of the wallet: 3 20s, 2 10s, 5 1s. She could have taken one of those 20s. The woman would never notice. The woman was rich, clearly. $20 wouldn't mean anything to her, but it would mean everything to Naomi. It would mean she was the kind of person who stole from sick old ladies. She gathered every cent and put it all back in the wallet, tucked the credit cards carefully into their slots, picked up the pill bottles and set them in the purse. "Here you go," Naomi said, handing it back. "Everything's there." The woman looked at her, really looked at her, and Naomi saw something shift in her eyes. Recognition, maybe, or surprise. "Thank you." The woman's hand was shaking badly as she reached into the wallet. "Please let me." She pulled out a $50 bill. Naomi's heart jumped. $50. That was groceries for 2 weeks. That was part of the electric bill. That was, "I can't accept that," Naomi heard herself say. "Really? It's fine. You helped me. I want to give you something. You don't owe me anything for being a decent person." The woman's eyes got watery. Most people wouldn't have stopped. "Then most people suck." Naomi smiled. "I'm just glad you're okay. But you should probably see a doctor. Your breathing doesn't sound great." "I just came from the doctor, actually." The woman managed a weak smile. "He said my heart is, well, not what it used to be." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I'm 78. Everything stops working eventually." She tucked the 50 back into her wallet but pulled out a 10 instead. "At least, let me pay for your coffee and get yourself some dinner. You look like you need it." Naomi wanted to refuse, but the $10 was already on the table, and the woman was looking at her with such kindness that saying no felt cruel. "Thank you," Naomi said quietly. "What's your name, dear?" "Naomi. Naomi Brooks." "I'm Eleanor. Eleanor Whitfield." She extended her hand. Naomi shook it gently. The woman's grip was weak, her skin paper-thin and cold. "Are you a student?" Eleanor asked. "Yes, ma'am. Community college. Nursing program." "A nurse." Eleanor smiled. "That's wonderful." Why nursing? Naomi thought about Grandpa Walter, about watching him struggle to breathe, to walk, to do basic things that used to be easy, about all the nurses who treated him over the years, some good, some bad, some who clearly didn't give a damn. "I want to help people like my grandfather," she said. "He's sick, heart failure, COPD, diabetes, and I see how hard it is for him, how scary it is. I want to be the kind of nurse who actually cares." Eleanor's eyes were definitely watery now. "Your grandfather is lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have him. He raised me." They talked for another minute, just small talk, nothing important. But there was something about Eleanor that made Naomi feel seen. Like she wasn't just a broke student, or a waitress, or a cleaning lady. Like she was a person who mattered. "I should go," Naomi said finally. "I need to catch the bus." "Of course. Thank you again, Naomi. Take care of yourself, Mrs. Whitfield." Naomi went back to her booth, drank the rest of her now cold coffee, and used the $10 to order the meatloaf special to go. When Doris brought the styrofoam container, she'd added extra mashed potatoes and a slice of apple pie. "On the house," Doris said. You did a good thing." Naomi left with her eyes stinging and her throat tight. Sometimes kindness came from the strangest places. She made it to the bus stop just as the last bus pulled up. On the ride home, she held the warm container in her lap and thought about Eleanor Whitfield. She'd probably never see her again. 3 days later, everything went to hell. It started with a weather alert on Naomi's phone, severe storm warning, heavy rain, high winds, possible flooding. Stay inside if possible. Staying inside wasn't possible. Naomi had a delivery shift for the food app, her newest side job, picking up orders on her bike and dropping them off. $5 per delivery plus tips. On a good night, she could make $60 in 4 hours. She needed a good night. The insurance company had finally approved Grandpa's medication refill, but only a partial approval. Instead of a 90-day supply, they'd cover 30 days. And instead of a $10 copay, it was now $85 because they'd moved it to a different tier. Something about formulary changes and prior authorization and a bunch of other bullshit that basically meant give us more money. So Naomi was out on her bike at 8 p.m. in October, racing against a storm, delivering pad thai and bubble tea to people who were warm and dry in their apartments. The rain started around 8:30, light at first, then heavier still. By 9 o'clock, it was a downpour, the kind of rain that hurt when it hit you, the kind that flooded storm drains and turned streets into rivers. Naomi was soaked within minutes. Her phone was in a plastic bag, the food orders in an insulated backpack, but she was drenched. Her hands were numb on the handlebars. Her sneakers squelched with every pedal. She'd just dropped off her 4th delivery when her phone rang. Mrs. Chen. Naomi's stomach dropped. She pulled over under an awning and answered. "Hello. Naomi, honey, your grandfather. He's coughing real bad. He can't catch his breath. I give him the inhaler, but it's not helping." "Is he conscious?" "Yes, but he's scared. I'm scared too." Okay. Give him 2 puffs of the inhaler. Wait 5 minutes, then 2 more. I left the emergency nebulizer on top of the fridge. You see it. I got it. Set it up. And call me back in 10 minutes. If he's worse, call 911. Don't wait." Okay. Naomi hung up and stood there in the rain, frozen with indecision. She was 40 minutes from home by bike in good weather. In this storm, it'd take an hour. Maybe more. She looked at her phone. 3 more deliveries queued up. Another $30 if she finished them. $30 she desperately needed. But Grandpa, her phone buzzed. A text from the delivery app. Complete your scheduled deliveries or face penalties. Another buzz. Mrs. Chen. He's a little better. The nebulizer is helping. Don't rush. Be safe. Naomi closed her eyes. She couldn't afford the penalties. She couldn't afford to lose this job. But she also couldn't stop thinking about Grandpa sitting in that apartment, struggling to breathe Mrs. Chen's scared face. She was about to cancel the deliveries anyway when she saw something that made her stop. Across the street near the bus station, someone was on the ground. At first, Naomi thought it was just a homeless person sleeping. But then she saw the coat, that expensive navy coat, the silk scarf. Eleanor Whitfield. Naomi didn't think. She just ran. Eleanor was slumped against the bus station wall, soaking wet, one hand pressed to her chest. Her breathing was rapid and shallow, her lips definitely blue now. "Mrs. Whitfield," Naomi dropped to her knees. "What happened? What are you doing out here?" Eleanor's eyes struggled to focus. The hospital. They said, my heart. You're having chest pain." A tiny nod. "Did you take your nitroglycerin?" "I forgot it. At the hospital." Naomi looked around wildly. The bus station was deserted, no cars passing. The rain was coming down so hard she could barely see across the street. "I'm calling 911. "No." Eleanor grabbed her wrist with surprising strength. "No ambulance. I just want to go home." "You need to go to the hospital." "I came from the hospital." Eleanor's voice was bitter. "They did tests. Told me I have maybe 6 months, maybe less. Then my lawyer called, started talking about power of attorney and living wills and moving me to a facility. My daughter-in-law." She stopped, gasping for air. "She was already planning how to spend my money, before I'm even dead." "Mrs. Whitfield, I got angry, told my driver to leave. I'd take the bus home. I'd show them I could still take care of myself." She laughed, a wet, painful sound. "Stupid old woman." Naomi's phone rang again. Mrs. Chen. She looked at it, then at Eleanor, then at the empty street. This was not her problem. This was a stranger. She had her own grandfather to worry about. She had deliveries to finish. She had exactly 0 room in her life for someone else's crisis. But Eleanor was looking at her with those scared eyes, and Naomi could see her own grandfather in that face, the fear, the frustration, the loneliness of being old and sick and forgotten. She answered the phone. "Mrs. Chen, how is he?" "Much better. He's breathing good now. He's resting." "Okay, I'm going to be late. Maybe another hour or two. Can you stay with him?" "Of course, honey. I'm not going anywhere." Naomi hung up and looked at Eleanor. "Where do you live?" "Harborview Towers, but you don't have to." "Can you walk?" "I think so." Naomi helped her up. Eleanor was heavier than she looked and unsteady on her feet. Naomi wrapped one arm around her waist, letting Eleanor lean on her. "My building is about 6 blocks from here," Eleanor said. 6 blocks? In a hurricane, supporting a woman twice her age who might be having a heart attack. "Then we better get moving," Naomi said. They started walking. It was the longest 6 blocks of Naomi's life. The rain battered them. The wind tried to knock them down. Water rushed past their ankles in the street. Twice, Eleanor almost fell. Once, Naomi almost dropped her. But they kept going. Eleanor tried to talk, rambling about her life, her regrets, her daughter who died from an opioid overdose 5 years ago. Naomi mostly just listened, focused on putting one foot in front of the other. "You're a good person," Eleanor said at one point. "I could have died on that sidewalk and a dozen people would have just walked past." "You're not dying tonight," Naomi said firmly. "Not on my watch." Eleanor laughed, spoken like a true nurse. By the time they reached Harborview Towers, Naomi was shaking from exhaustion and cold. The building was beautiful, all glass and steel. A doorman visible through the entrance, warm light spilling onto the wet sidewalk. Naomi helped Eleanor to the door and reached for the handle. The door opened before she could touch it. A security guard stood there looking at them. At Naomi, soaking wet in torn jeans and a food delivery jacket. At Eleanor, barely conscious, clinging to this stranger. "Ma'am, are you all right?" he asked Eleanor, but he was looking at Naomi when he said it, and his hand was moving toward his radio. "I'm fine, Bernard," Eleanor tried to say, but it came out slurred. Another guard appeared, then a resident in the lobby, a middle-aged white man in a business suit. "What's going on here?" the businessman asked. "I found her at the bus station," Naomi started to explain. "She was having chest pain, so "You found her?" The second guard's hand was definitely on his radio now. "She helped me," Eleanor said louder this time. "She's a nurse. But Eleanor's words were getting jumbled. The stress, the walk, the pain, it was all too much. Her knees buckled. Naomi caught her, holding her upright. "She needs to sit down. Now." "Step away from her, please," the first guard said. "What no? She's sick. She needs—" "Step away from Mrs. Whitfield. Now." And suddenly, Naomi understood. They thought she'd done something to Eleanor. They thought she'd attacked her, robbed her, hurt her. They thought she was a criminal. "I didn't do anything wrong," Naomi said, and she hated how her voice shook. "I was helping her. She couldn't breathe. I walked her home." "Then you won't mind if we call the police?" "Call them. I don't care. Just let her sit down first." The businessman pulled out his phone and started recording. "I'm documenting this, in case there's an investigation." More people were gathering now. Other residents, another security guard, all of them looking at Naomi like she was a threat. Eleanor was trying to explain, but she could barely form words. The guards were talking over her. Someone was definitely calling 911. Naomi stood there, soaking wet, exhausted, supporting a sick woman, and felt that familiar combination of emotions, anger, and fear, and bone-deep weariness. Anger because she'd done the right thing and was being treated like a criminal. Fear because she knew how this looked, and she knew how these things ended for people who looked like her. Weariness because this was her life. Because no matter how hard she tried, the world kept finding new ways to push her down. But even with all that, even with the guards closing in and phones recording, and Eleanor barely conscious in her arms, Naomi didn't let go. If she let go, Eleanor would fall, and Naomi couldn't live with that. So she held on. The police arrived in 4 minutes. 4 minutes of Naomi standing in the lobby of Harborview Towers, holding up Eleanor Whitfield while security guards and residents stared at her like she was a criminal. 4 minutes of people whispering. "Did you see her go through the woman's purse? Someone should check if anything's missing. I heard there's been a string of robberies in the area." Naomi heard all of it. She stood there, her arms aching from supporting Eleanor's weight, water dripping from her clothes onto the expensive marble floor, and she heard every word. Eleanor kept trying to tell them, "She helped me. She's a good girl. Please." But Eleanor's voice was weak and slurred. The guards kept saying, "Don't worry, Mrs. Whitfield, we're handling it." Like Naomi was an it to be handled. When the police walked in, Naomi felt her stomach drop to her feet. 2 officers, one older white with tired eyes, one younger black looking uncomfortable. "Someone called about a possible assault," the older officer said. "That's not what happened," Naomi said immediately. "I found her at the bus station. She was sick. I helped her home." "That's what she says," the businessman with the phone chimed in. "But Mrs. Whitfield seems confused. She might not remember what actually happened." "I'm not confused," Eleanor tried to shout, but it came out as a wheeze. "Ma'am, we need you to step away from her," the older officer said to Naomi. "She can't stand on her own. There's a chair right there. Help her to the chair, then step back." Naomi guided Eleanor to the lobby chair. The old woman gripped her hand, whispering, "Don't leave. Please don't leave." "I won't," Naomi promised, though she had no idea if she could keep that promise. The younger officer approached Eleanor gently. "Mrs. Whitfield, are you hurt? Did this woman harm you in any way?" "No, she saved me. I was at the bus station. I couldn't breathe. She walked me all the way home in the storm." "Why were you at the bus station, ma'am?" Eleanor's face crumpled. I came from the hospital, got bad news about my heart, then my family. They started calling about my will about facilities. I got upset, told my driver to leave. I was going to take the bus, but She pressed her hand to her chest. "I got dizzy. Couldn't catch my breath." The officer turned to Naomi. "And you just happened to be there." "I was doing food deliveries. On my bike. I saw her on the ground and stopped." "In the middle of a storm?" "Yes." "Why didn't you call an ambulance?" "She asked me not to. She wanted to go home." The older officer looked skeptical. "That's an expensive coat she's wearing. Nice purse. You sure you weren't trying to rob her?" Heat flooded Naomi's face. "I didn't take anything from her." "Mind if we check your bag?" Yes, actually. Yes, I mind." "If you've got nothing to hide." "I don't have anything to hide, but you don't get to search my stuff just because I'm black and she's rich and white." The words came out louder than she meant them to. The lobby went quiet. The younger officer shifted uncomfortably. "Nobody's saying that." "You're thinking it, though." "Look," the older officer said, his voice hardening. "We can do this easy, or we can do this hard. We've got multiple witnesses who say you were acting suspiciously. Helping someone isn't suspicious. And we need to verify that nothing was taken from Mrs. Whitfield. So either you consent to a search, or we can detain you while we investigate further." Naomi felt tears burning behind her eyes. She would not cry. She would not give them that. "Fine," she said. "Search my bag." She shrugged off her backpack and threw it on the floor harder than necessary. "Go ahead. You'll find 3 restaurant orders that I didn't get to deliver because I was too busy saving someone's life. My wallet with $11 in it, my work uniforms, and a nursing textbook." The older officer picked up the bag and started going through it. Eleanor struggled to her feet. "This is ridiculous. I'm telling you, she didn't do anything wrong." "Please sit down, Mrs. Whitfield. You're clearly unwell." "I'm unwell because my heart is failing, not because I'm senile." Eleanor's voice cracked. "This girl gave up her work, walked me 6 blocks in a hurricane, and you're treating her like a criminal." "Ma'am, we're just trying to protect you." "I don't need protection from her. I need protection from people who see a young black woman helping an old white woman and immediately assume the worst." The lobby was silent now. The older officer pulled items out of Naomi's bag one by one. Textbook, uniform, 3 food containers, the bubble tea had spilled everywhere. Wallet. He opened it, counted the money, looked at her ID. "This address, you live in the Riverside district?" "Yes." "That's 40 minutes from here." "I know." "So you were 40 minutes from home in a storm delivering food?" "Yes." "And you just happened to see Mrs. Whitfield and decided to walk her all the way to one of the most expensive buildings in the city instead of calling for help." Naomi met his eyes. "I helped someone who needed help. That's it. That's the whole story." He stared at her for a long moment, then looked at the younger officer. They had some kind of silent conversation. Finally, he handed her bag back. "Your story checks out, but I'd advise you to call emergency services next time. Less room for misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding," Naomi repeated flatly. "You're free to go." Eleanor reached for her. "Wait, please." But Bernard, the security guard, was already moving between them. "Mrs. Whitfield, let's get you upstairs. You need to rest." "I want to give her something for helping me." "We'll take care of it, ma'am." They were ushering Eleanor toward the elevator. She kept looking back at Naomi, her mouth forming words Naomi couldn't hear. And then the elevator doors closed, and she was gone. Naomi stood there in the lobby, dripping water on marble, her bag hanging limp in her hand. The businessman was still recording. The residents were still staring. The police were already leaving their job done. Naomi walked out into the rain. Her bike was where she'd left it unlocked because she'd been more worried about a dying woman than about her bike getting stolen. By some miracle, it was still there. She checked her phone. 11 missed calls from the delivery app. Her account had been flagged for not completing orders. She'd probably be suspended. A text from Mrs. Chen. "Walter is sleeping. I'll stay until you get home." A voicemail from the electric company. An email from the college about the $480 in fees. Naomi sat down on her bike seat and put her head in her hands. She'd just helped save someone's life and almost gotten arrested for it. She'd lost a night's worth of delivery income. She'd been humiliated in front of a lobby full of people who looked at her and saw a threat, not a person. And for what? Eleanor Whitfield would go back to her expensive apartment surrounded by people who wanted her money, and Naomi would go back to her one-room apartment with the broken radiator and the unpaid bills. The world didn't reward doing the right thing. It punished you for it. Naomi got on her bike and started pedaling home through the rain. She was soaked, freezing, exhausted, and so angry she could barely see straight. But underneath the anger was something else, something harder and colder, the hollow certainty that no matter how hard she tried, no matter how good she was, it would never be enough. The world had already decided what she was worth, and it wasn't much. Naomi got home at 1:47 a.m. Mrs. Chen was asleep in the chair next to Grandpa Walter's bed, her head tilted back, mouth slightly open. The TV was on, low, some late-night infomercial selling kitchen gadgets. Grandpa was asleep too, his breathing rough but steady. The nebulizer sat on the nightstand, a glass of water beside it. Naomi stood in the doorway, dripping water onto the floor, and felt something crack inside her chest. Mrs. Chen woke up with a start. "Naomi, oh my God, you're soaked. What happened?" "Long story." Naomi's voice came out flat, empty. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, thank you for staying with him." Mrs. Chen stood, her joints creaking. She was wearing her bathrobe and slippers. "He woke up around 10, wanted to know where you were. I told him you had to work late. He worried, but I got him to take his pills and use the nebulizer. He's been sleeping since 11. "Thank you," Naomi said again. She pulled out the $11 from her wallet. "Please take this." "Put that away." Mrs. Chen waved her hand. "I don't want your money. Walter's my friend. You're my neighbor. That's what we do." After Mrs. Chen left, Naomi peeled off her wet clothes and stood in the shower until the hot water ran out. 3 minutes. The hot water never lasted longer than 3 minutes. She dried off with a thin towel and pulled on the same clothes she'd worn yesterday. They were the only clean ones left. Laundry would have to wait until she had quarters for the machine in the basement. In bed, she couldn't sleep. Her mind kept replaying the lobby scene. The security guard's hand on his radio, the businessman recording, the way the police officer looked at her like she was already guilty. "She helped me," Eleanor had said. "She's a good person." But good didn't matter when people had already decided who you were based on your skin color and your zip code, and the fact that your clothes came from Goodwill. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A notification from the delivery app. "Your account has been suspended pending review of missed deliveries." Perfect. Another buzz, an email, subject line, opportunity. Naomi almost deleted it without reading. Probably spam. But something made her open it. "Dear Miss Brooks, my name is Patricia Coleman. I am the executive director of the Eleanor Whitfield Charitable Foundation. Mrs. Whitfield has informed us of the extraordinary service you provided to her last evening, and she would like to meet with you to express her gratitude in person. Would you be available to meet at our offices tomorrow today at 2 p.m.? Mrs. Whitfield is most insistent. Please let me know at your earliest convenience. Regards, Patricia Coleman." Naomi read it twice. Then a third time. Eleanor wanted to meet her at a foundation office to express her gratitude. A check, probably. Naomi had heard of rich people doing that, giving reward money to people who help them. $100. Maybe $200 if she was lucky. $200 would cover half the electric bill. She typed back, "I can be there at 2. Thank you." Then she set her phone down and stared at the ceiling until the sky started turning gray outside the window. At 1:30 p.m., Naomi stood outside the Whitfield Foundation building and felt completely out of place. The building was downtown, all glass and chrome, the kind of place where people wore suits and carried briefcases. Naomi was wearing her cleanest jeans, which still had a stain on the knee, and a sweater with a small hole in the sleeve. She almost turned around and left, but she thought about the electric bill, about Grandpa's medication, about the $480 she owed the college. She went inside. The lobby was like something from a movie. Marble floors, modern art on the walls, a reception desk that probably cost more than Naomi's entire apartment. "I'm here to see Patricia Coleman," Naomi told the receptionist. "I have a 2 p.m. appointment." The receptionist, a young woman with perfect hair and perfect makeup, looked her up and down. Name: Naomi Brooks. Typing. "Take the elevator to the 5th floor. Someone will meet you there." The elevator was glass on one side, showing the city as it rose. Naomi watched the streets get smaller below her and felt her stomach twist with anxiety. On the 5th floor, a woman in a navy pantsuit was waiting, 50-something black with kind eyes and a professional smile. "Miss Brooks, I'm Patricia Coleman. Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me." Patricia led her down a hallway lined with photos. Eleanor at ribbon-cutting ceremonies, Eleanor with mayors and governors, Eleanor handing oversized checks to smiling nonprofits. They passed a conference room where several people in business attire were having a meeting. One of them looked up and saw Naomi, frowned. Patricia opened a door at the end of the hall. "Mrs. Whitfield is waiting for you." The office was huge. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, bookshelves lined with leather-bound volumes, a desk that looked like it was made from a single piece of wood, and Eleanor sitting in a wheelchair near the window, an oxygen tube in her nose. She looked smaller than she had 3 nights ago, frailer, but her eyes lit up when she saw Naomi. "Naomi, oh, thank God. I was so worried you wouldn't come." "Mrs. Whitfield," Naomi stepped forward awkwardly. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck, but I'm alive. Thanks to you." Eleanor gestured to the chair across from her. "Please sit." Naomi sat. Patricia remained standing by the door. "I want to apologize," Eleanor said immediately, "for what happened in my building. The way you were treated. It was inexcusable." "It's okay." "It's not okay." Eleanor's voice was firm. "You saved my life, and they treated you like a criminal. I've already spoken to the building management. Those security guards have been disciplined." Naomi didn't know what to say to that. "I also want to thank you properly." Eleanor nodded to Patricia, who pulled an envelope from a folder. Here it comes, Naomi thought. The reward check. Patricia handed her the envelope. Naomi opened it. It was a check for $25,000. Naomi's brain stopped working. "That should cover your tuition," Eleanor said, "and your grandfather's medications, and whatever else you need." I can't." Naomi couldn't form complete sentences. $25,000. That was more money than she'd ever seen in her life. "You can and you will," Eleanor said. "But that's not all. I've been thinking a lot these past few days. About my life, my legacy, what matters. I spent 40 years building a fortune. I built hospitals, schools, community centers, put my name on buildings, won awards." Eleanor paused, looking out the window. "But the night of the storm, when I was sitting at that bus station thinking I might die there, nobody stopped. Dozens of people walked past me, looked right at me, and kept walking. I was just an inconvenience to them." She turned back to Naomi. "You stopped. You were soaking wet, exhausted, probably had your own problems to deal with. But you stopped. You saw me as a person who needed help, not a name on a building or a bank account with a lot of zeros." Naomi's throat was tight. "I just did what anyone should do. But most people don't. That's the problem." Eleanor leaned forward. "I want to do something that actually matters. Not another building with my name on it. Something that helps people like you. People who are trying so hard, working so hard, but the system keeps pushing them down." Patricia stepped forward and placed a folder on the table. "We want to create a scholarship and training program," Eleanor explained, "for nursing students from low-income backgrounds. Full tuition, living stipend, textbooks, everything. But also practical support, childcare, transportation, emergency funds for when life happens. Because I know tuition isn't the only barrier." Naomi stared at the folder. She couldn't open it. If she opened it, this might turn out to be real. And if it was real, she might start crying and never stop. "We want you to help design the program," Patricia added. "You know what students actually need, what barriers they face, what would make a real difference." I'm just a student. I don't know anything about running programs." You know more than any consultant we could hire. Eleanor said, "You're living it right now. That's the expertise we need." There was a knock on the door. A man in an expensive suit walked in, late 50s, thinning, hair-pinched expression. "Mother, we need to talk about this." "Richard, not now." "Yes, now." Richard looked at Naomi like she was something he'd found on his shoe. "You can't just hand over the foundation's money to strangers." "She's not a stranger. She saved my life. So give her a reward and be done with it. You don't need to create an entire program." "I don't need your permission, Richard. It's my foundation. Actually, as your attorney and executor, I have a responsibility to make sure you're not being taken advantage of." Richard turned to Naomi. "No offense, but this looks very suspicious. You conveniently find my mother, help her home, and now suddenly there's a scholarship program." Naomi felt her face burn. "I didn't ask for any of this." "Richard, that's enough." Eleanor's voice was ice. "Leave, now." "Mother, I'm trying to protect you." "I said leave." Richard's jaw clenched. He looked at Patricia. "We'll discuss this later, with the board." Then he walked out, slamming the door behind him. The silence that followed was heavy. "I'm sorry," Eleanor said quietly. "My son thinks I've lost my mind, that I'm making emotional decisions because I'm dying." "Are you?" Naomi asked before she could stop herself. Eleanor smiled. "Maybe a little, but here's what I know. I've spent my whole life making careful, rational decisions, building wealth, creating structures, and I was still alone on a bus station bench waiting to die. All that money, all that success, and nobody cared." She reached across the table and took Naomi's hand. "You cared, for no reason except that it was the right thing to do. That's worth more than every building I ever built." Naomi finally opened the folder. Inside was a proposal. The Eleanor Whitfield Nursing Fellowship Program. Scholarships for 20 students per year. Full support. Mentorship. A whole structure built around the idea that talent exists everywhere, but opportunity doesn't. "I can't accept this," Naomi whispered. "Why not?" "Because I don't deserve it. I was there. Anyone would have done the same thing." "But they didn't." "You did." Eleanor squeezed her hand. "And now you have a choice. You can take that check and make your own life easier. God knows you've earned it. Or you can help me build something that makes it easier for dozens of students like you. Either way, I'm grateful." Naomi looked at the proposal, at the check, at Eleanor's tired, hopeful face. She thought about Grandpa Walter fighting for workers' rights back in the day, neighbor helping neighbor, the way things used to be. She thought about all the students she'd seen in the financial aid office looking as desperate and exhausted as she felt. "If I do this," Naomi said slowly, "I don't want to just help design the program. I want to make sure it actually works. That it's not just another charity that makes rich people feel good but doesn't really change anything." Eleanor smiled. "Deal." The next 6 months were the hardest of Naomi's life, and the best. Eleanor's lawyer, Richard, tried to block the program, said his mother wasn't mentally competent to make such large financial decisions. He demanded she undergo a psychiatric evaluation. Eleanor agreed. The psychiatrist spent 3 hours with her, asked her to count backwards from 100 by sevens, name the president, draw a clock, tell him about her life, her plans, her reasoning. His report was unequivocal. Eleanor Whitfield was of sound mind, clear judgment, and perfectly capable of making her own decisions. Richard tried to convince the foundation board to overrule her. They refused, so he went to the media. "Elderly philanthropist being exploited by opportunistic woman," the headline read. The article included a photo of Naomi, her student ID picture, where she looked exhausted and barely awake, next to a photo of Eleanor receiving a humanitarian award. The comments section was vicious. "This is clearly elder abuse. She saw a rich old lady and saw dollar signs. Why didn't she just call 911? This whole story is suspicious." Naomi's phone started ringing. Reporters wanting her side of the story. Strangers calling her a con artist. Someone found her social media and left dozens of hateful comments. She wanted to quit, wanted to take her $25,000 and disappear. But Eleanor wouldn't let her. "They're attacking you because they're uncomfortable," Eleanor said during one of their weekly planning meetings. "You're forcing them to confront their own assumptions about who deserves help, about who gets to succeed. It's easier to call you a con artist than to admit the system is broken. It still sucks. It absolutely does. But we're not stopping." They didn't stop. Naomi cut her work hours down to part-time at the diner. The scholarship check covered her tuition and gave her a small living stipend. It wasn't much, But it was enough that she could actually sleep sometimes. She threw herself into designing the program, spent hours interviewing other students about what they needed, not what administrators thought they needed, what they actually needed. Childcare, transportation, emergency funds for when your car breaks down or your kid gets sick, textbooks on day one, not 3 weeks into the semester, mental health support, someone to call when you're drowning and don't know where to turn. It's not just about money, Naomi told the foundation board during a presentation. It's about removing every possible barrier so students can focus on learning instead of just surviving. Some board members got it. Others thought she was being unrealistic. You can't save everyone, one of them said, a banker in a suit that probably cost more than Naomi's rent. No, Naomi agreed, but we can save some. And those some will become nurses who understand what it's like to struggle, who treat their patients with dignity instead of judgment, who create change in their own communities. That matters. The program launched in September with 15 students. Naomi met each one, heard their stories. Maria, a single mom working 3 jobs while taking care of her disabled mother. James, a foster kid who aged out of the system at 18 with nowhere to go. Keisha, who was supporting her younger siblings after their parents were incarcerated. Every single one of them was brilliant. Every single one of them was drowning. The program gave them air. Naomi became their unofficial advisor, the person they called when the landlord raised the rent unexpectedly, when they couldn't afford their kids' asthma medication, when they failed a test and wanted to give up. She'd sit with them in the coffee shop, the same one where she'd first met Eleanor, and tell them what Eleanor had told her. You're not struggling because you're not good enough. You're struggling because the game is rigged, but you're going to win anyway. Most of them believed her. Some days she almost believed it herself. But it wasn't all success stories. In November, Grandpa Walter had another heart episode. Worse this time. The paramedics rushed him to the hospital. The doctors said his heart was failing faster than they'd expected. Maybe months, the cardiologist said. Maybe weeks. We can't be sure. Naomi sat in the hospital room holding his hand and felt her world tilt. I should be here more, she said. I've been so focused on the program on school, I haven't. Stop that. Walter's voice was weak but firm. You've been exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you should be doing. But you? I'm an old man, baby girl. My time is coming whether you sit here holding my hand every second or not. But this program, these students you're helping, that's going to outlive both of us. Naomi pressed her forehead against his hand. I don't want you to go. I know. I don't particularly want to go either. But that's not how it works. He paused, breathing hard. Remember what I told you about the shipyard, about workers looking out for each other? Yeah, you're doing that. Not just for one person, but for dozens. You're building the kind of community we used to have, where people actually give a damn about their neighbors. He squeezed her hand. Your grandmother would be so proud. Hell, I'm proud. Grandpa, let me finish. Another labored breath. When I'm gone, you're going to feel guilty, like you should have done more, spent more time. I'm telling you right now, don't. You gave me everything I needed. You took care of me when you could have put me in a home and gotten on with your life. You sacrificed your 20s for an old man's comfort. That's more than most people would do. You raised me. It's the least. It's not the least anything. It's everything. Walter's eyes were wet. And now I'm telling you, when I'm gone, I want you to keep going. Keep building this thing. Keep helping people. Don't you dare give up because of grief. I won't, Naomi promised, though her voice cracked. Good girl. Eleanor visited him in the hospital, brought flowers, sat and talked with him about the old days, about unions and strikes, and the importance of ordinary people standing together. Your granddaughter is extraordinary, Eleanor told him. I know, Walter said. She's been extraordinary since the day she was born. Just took the world a while to notice. Later, when Eleanor and Naomi were alone in the hallway, Eleanor said, I'm having my will updated. The bulk of my estate will go to the foundation to keep this program running long after I'm gone. Eleanor, you don't have to. I want to. Richard and his family will still get more money than they could spend in 10 lifetimes, but the foundation will get enough to support hundreds of students. Forever. Richard is going to lose his mind. I suspect you're right. Eleanor smiled grimly. He's already hired a lawyer. Says he's going to have me declared incompetent. Again. Can he do that? He can try. But I've been very careful. Multiple doctors have evaluated me. I've documented everything. My lawyer says his case is weak. She paused. But it's going to be ugly. And it's going to get uglier when I'm gone and the will is read. I'm sorry you're going to be in the middle of it. I can handle it. I know you can, but you shouldn't have to. Walter came home from the hospital in early December, weaker, more tired, but alive. Naomi cut back on everything else to spend more time with him. They'd sit together in the evenings, watching old westerns on TV, not saying much, just being together. One night he said, "You remember when you were little and I told you that story about the bridge?" Naomi smiled. "The one about the old man who built a bridge across a river even though he was too old to ever use it himself. That's the one. Remember what the traveler asked him? 'Old man, why are you building a bridge you'll never cross?'" Naomi recited. She'd heard this story 100 times. And the old man said, "I'm not building it for me. I'm building it for the children who will come after, so their journey will be easier than mine was." Walter nodded. "That's what you're doing, baby girl. You're building a bridge." "We're building it," Naomi corrected. "You, me, Eleanor, all of us." "Yeah." Walter closed his eyes. "We're building a bridge." He died 3 days before Christmas, peacefully in his sleep. Mrs. Chen found him in the morning when she came over to check on him. Naomi was at the foundation office when she got the call. She was in the middle of reviewing applications for the next cohort of students. She left everything and went home. The funeral was small. Mrs. Chen and a few other neighbors, some of his old union buddies, the ones who were still alive. Eleanor came despite her own declining health. Some of the students from the program came even though they'd never met Walter. Naomi stood at the front of the community center, the same place Walter used to go for union meetings, and tried to find words. "My grandfather believed in people taking care of each other," she finally said. "Not because they'd get something out of it, not because it was easy, but because that's what humans are supposed to do. We're supposed to help each other, build things together, make sure the next generation has it a little bit easier." She looked at the small crowd. He would have loved what we're building. This program, this community. He would have said, "We're finally doing it right. Not charity from the top down, but people actually taking care of each other. Neighbor helping neighbor." Her voice broke. "I'm going to miss him every day for the rest of my life, but I'm going to keep building, because that's what he'd want. That's what he taught me." After the funeral, Eleanor took her aside. "Take some time," Eleanor said. "Grieve. Rest. The program will still be here when you're ready." "I don't need time. I need to keep going." "Naomi, he made me promise, right before he died, made me promise I wouldn't stop because of grief." Naomi wiped her eyes. "So I'm not stopping." Eleanor looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, but you lean on us when you need to. That's what bridges are for. They hold you up when you can't hold yourself." By the end of year 1, 15 students had completed their first semester. 13 passed all their classes. 1 took a medical leave for family reasons. 1 dropped out. That's an 87% retention rate, Patricia told the foundation board. The national average for low-income students in nursing programs is less than 50%. The board approved funding for year 2. 25 students this time. Naomi graduated from the community college in May with a 3.8 GPA. She was accepted into the 4-year RN program at the State University. The Whitfield Fellowship covered everything. She moved into a small apartment near campus. Her first place without Grandpa Walter. It felt too quiet, too empty, but she filled it with students. The fellowship students would come over for study groups, potlucks, late-night stress sessions before exams. Her apartment became the unofficial headquarters of the program. "You're doing too much," Eleanor told her during one of their weekly check-ins. Eleanor's health was declining steadily now. She was in a wheelchair, full-time oxygen 24/7, but her mind was still sharp. "I'm fine." "You're exhausted. You're a full-time student. You're basically co-running this program, and you're still working part-time at the hospital." "I like working. It keeps me grounded." "It's going to burn you out." "Then I'll deal with it when I burn out." Eleanor gave her a look. "Stubborn. I learned from the best." Despite Eleanor's concerns, Naomi thrived. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just surviving. She was actually building something, creating change, watching students who'd been drowning suddenly find solid ground. Maria, the single mom, graduated from the LPN program and got a job at a pediatric clinic. She sent Naomi a photo of her first paycheck with 3 words, "We made it." James, the foster kid, struggled with chemistry, but excelled in patient care. He wanted to work in hospice, helping people die with dignity. "Because I know what it's like to feel alone," he said. Keisha maintained a 4.0 while supporting 3 siblings. She wanted to be a nurse practitioner, maybe open a clinic in her neighborhood where people were actually treated with respect. Every single story reminded Naomi why this mattered, but the pushback didn't stop. Richard hired a private investigator. The PI followed Naomi, talked to her neighbors, tried to dig up dirt. He found nothing because there was nothing to find. Richard then claimed Eleanor was being emotionally manipulated, filed a lawsuit claiming undue influence. The case was dismissed. He tried to get the foundation board to vote Eleanor out as chair. The board refused. Finally, he went to the media again, this time with a new angle: foundation funds misused to benefit founder's friend. The article pointed out that Naomi was both a scholarship recipient and a program advisor, claimed it was a conflict of interest, suggested she was funneling money to herself. The story gained traction. Local news picked it up. Social media exploded. Naomi's photo was everywhere again. Comments called her a grifter, a thief, a scam artist. "We need to respond," Patricia said during an emergency meeting. "How?" Naomi asked. "Anything I say will sound defensive." "Let me handle it," Eleanor said. She'd been quiet until now, saving her energy. The next day, Eleanor held a press conference. Patricia wheeled her to the podium, oxygen tank, visible hands shaking on the armrests. "I'm dying," Eleanor said bluntly into the microphones. "My doctors give me maybe 3 months. So I don't have time for bullshit. Let me be very clear." She looked directly into the cameras. "Naomi Brooks is not stealing from my foundation. She is the heart of it. She has helped create a program that is actually changing lives, real measurable change. We have data. We have testimonials. We have students who would have dropped out, who are now thriving." Eleanor paused to catch her breath. "My son is upset because I'm not leaving him as much money as he thinks he deserves. That's what this is really about. But I'm not leaving my fortune to someone who will use it to buy more houses and more cars. I'm leaving it to create opportunity for people who've never had it, people like Naomi, who work harder than anyone I've ever met and still can't get ahead because the system is broken." Another pause. "If you have a problem with that, I genuinely don't care. I'll be dead soon, but this program will continue. And it will continue to be led by people who actually understand what it's like to struggle. That's not a conflict of interest. That's the whole point." She looked tired, ancient, but her voice was steel. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have maybe 1,000 days left on this earth. I'd like to spend them doing something that actually matters instead of arguing with my greedy son and cynical reporters." Patricia wheeled her away from the podium. The reporters shouted questions. Eleanor didn't answer. She'd said what she needed to say. The video went viral. Millions of views. The narrative shifted. Opinion pieces praised Eleanor's candor. Columnists called out Richard's obvious greed. Social media rallied behind Naomi. For the first time, the story was what it should have been from the start. A story about helping, not taking. About building, not exploiting. Richard went quiet after that. His lawyer advised him to drop it. Wait until Eleanor died, then challenge the will properly. "He's going to make your life hell when I'm gone," Eleanor told Naomi. "I know. The will is ironclad. Multiple lawyers have reviewed it, but he'll still fight. It could take years to settle. I'll deal with it. You shouldn't have to. Neither should you." Naomi sat beside Eleanor's wheelchair. They were in Eleanor's apartment, the same building where Naomi had almost been arrested 2 years ago. "But here we are, so we'll deal with it together." Eleanor smiled. "You know what my daughter would have loved about you, your stubbornness. She was stubborn too. Wouldn't back down from anything." Eleanor didn't talk about her daughter much. The loss was still too painful. "What was her name?" Naomi asked. "Sarah." Eleanor's eyes went distant. She wanted to be a teacher, work with kids in underserved schools. She had this idea that education could fix everything, that if kids just had good teachers who believed in them, they could overcome anything. What happened? Car accident, but really it was the pills. She'd hurt her back, got prescribed opioids, couldn't stop taking them. She was driving under the influence when she crashed. Eleanor's voice was barely a whisper. "I was so focused on my foundation work, I didn't see it happening. By the time I realized she needed help, it was too late. I'm sorry. I'm sorry too." Every day, Eleanor looked at Naomi. "That's why this matters so much to me. Sarah believed in helping people, in making the world better. I failed her. But maybe if I can help students like you, maybe that's, I don't know, something." Naomi took her hand. "It's not just something, it's everything. Eleanor Whitfield died on a Tuesday in March. Naomi was with her. So was Patricia, a hospice nurse, Eleanor's granddaughter from California who'd flown in at the last minute. Richard wasn't there. He'd visited once briefly 2 weeks earlier, spent the entire time talking about the will with his lawyer on speakerphone until Eleanor asked him to leave. At the end, Eleanor was more unconscious than not. But in one of her final lucid moments, she opened her eyes and looked at Naomi. "The bridge," she whispered. "What about it?" Naomi leaned close. "You're not just crossing it. You're building it. For others. We built it together." Eleanor smiled. "Good. Don't stop." "I won't. I promise." "I know." Eleanor's eyes closed. "You never break promises." She died 4 hours later. The funeral was massive. Politicians, business leaders, celebrities, people who'd never met Eleanor but knew her name on buildings. Naomi sat in the back. She didn't belong up front with the family. Richard made that very clear. But when it was time for eulogies, Patricia called her name. Naomi walked to the podium, aware of every eye on her. Richard's glare from the front row, reporters in the back, cameras everywhere. "I knew Eleanor Whitfield for less than 3 years," Naomi began, "which means I knew her for a tiny fraction of her life. But in that time, she changed everything for me. Not because she gave me money, though she did, but because she saw me, really saw me, as a person, as someone with potential, as someone worth investing in." She looked out at the sea of faces. A lot of people here knew Eleanor as a philanthropist, a businesswoman, a name on buildings. I knew her as a stubborn, opinionated woman who refused to accept that things have to be the way they are, who believed we could do better, who put her money where her mouth was. Naomi's voice strengthened. The Whitfield Fellowship Program has now supported 50 students, 50 people who are working 3 jobs, raising kids alone, taking care of sick family members, and trying to get an education. 50 people who the system told to give up, who were drowning. We threw them a lifeline, and you know what happened? They grabbed it, and they're thriving. She pulled out a piece of paper. Maria is a pediatric nurse now. James is working in hospice care. Keisha is in NP school. 37 others are in various stages of their nursing education. All of them are going to be nurses who understand what it's like to struggle, who treat their patients with dignity, who create change in their communities. Naomi looked directly at Richard. Eleanor's legacy isn't the buildings with her name on them. It's the nurses who will save lives because she believed in them. It's the communities that will be healthier because those nurses understand what it's like to be poor, to be marginalized, to be dismissed by systems that should help you. She folded the paper. Eleanor told me once that she'd spent her life building monuments to herself, and it left her alone on a bus bench dying. She said the only thing that mattered in the end was whether you helped people, whether you made their journey easier. Naomi's throat tightened. She made my journey easier, and because of that, I'm making it easier for others. That's how bridges work. Someone builds it for you, you cross it, then you turn around and help others across. And eventually, we're all on the other side together. She stepped away from the podium. The applause was immediate and thunderous. Not the polite golf claps of a funeral, but real, genuine applause. Richard looked furious. Naomi didn't care. The will reading happened a week later. Richard contested it immediately, filed an emergency motion claiming undue influence, lack of capacity fraud. The judge reviewed the medical records, the psychiatric evaluations, the testimony from Eleanor's doctors. The will stood. 70% of Eleanor's estate, roughly $600 million, went to the Whitfield Foundation with specific instructions that it be used to support the nursing fellowship program and similar initiatives. Richard and his family got the remaining 30%, still nearly $200 million. Richard appealed, lost, appealed again, lost again. Finally, 2 years after Eleanor's death, the case was settled. The foundation got its money. By then, Naomi had graduated with her RN degree. She'd passed her boards on the first try. She'd been offered jobs at 3 different hospitals. She accepted a position at the hospital where she used to mop floors, pediatric oncology unit, the kids who needed someone who understood what it was like to be scared and powerless. She also became the official director of the Whitfield Fellowship Program. It was now supporting 200 students across 5 states. The retention rate was still above 80%. Other foundations started copying the model, creating programs that didn't just pay tuition, but actually supported students' whole lives. The narrative was changing. Slowly. Very slowly. 5 years after Eleanor's death, Naomi stood at the dedication ceremony for the Whitfield Community Nursing Center. It was located in her old neighborhood. The building where she used to live with Grandpa Walter was 3 blocks away. The center provided free nursing care to uninsured residents. It also served as a training site for fellowship students, a place where they could practice while serving their own communities. One wing was named the Eleanor Whitfield Wing. Another was named the Walter Brooks Wing. Naomi stood between the 2 plaques and felt something shift in her chest. Not grief exactly, more like completion. "You came a long way, baby girl," Mrs. Chen said beside her. She was 82 now, walked with a cane, but still sharp as ever. "We all did," Naomi said. The ceremony started. Politicians gave speeches. Community leaders thanked the foundation. Students testified about how the program changed their lives. When it was Naomi's turn to speak, she walked to the microphone and looked out at the crowd. So many faces. Some she knew, some she didn't. All of them here because they believed in what Eleanor had started, what they'd all built together. Eleanor Whitfield told me once that she'd spent her whole life building things that would outlast her. Buildings, businesses, a fortune. But she said the only thing that actually mattered was the people she helped. Naomi gestured to the center behind her. "This isn't a monument to her, or to my grandfather, or to me. It's a bridge between where we were and where we're going, between struggling alone and supporting each other, between a system that leaves people behind and a community that carries everyone forward," she smiled. "On the night of the storm, I was just a 20-year-old nursing student trying to survive. I had no idea that helping one scared sick woman would lead to all this. But that's how bridges work. You take one step, then another, and before you know it, you're on the other side. And when you look back, you see all the people crossing behind you, all the people you helped without even realizing it." Naomi's voice softened. "Grandpa Walter used to tell me a story about an old man building a bridge. The old man knew he'd never cross it himself, but he built it anyway for the children who would come after, so their journey would be easier." She looked at the 2 plaques, at the names of 2 people who'd believed in her when she didn't believe in herself. We're still building that bridge, and we're going to keep building it, because that's what humans are supposed to do. Take care of each other. Make sure the next person has it a little easier. Leave the world better than we found it. The applause started slowly, then built. People stood. Some were crying. Naomi stepped away from the microphone and walked to the bridge, an actual bridge that connected the 2 wings of the center. A covered walkway with windows on both sides looking out at the neighborhood. She stood in the middle and looked both ways. Behind her, the past, everything that brought her here. Ahead, the future, everything still to be built. She thought about that night in the storm, soaking wet, exhausted, holding up a dying woman because it was the right thing to do. She'd had no idea it would lead here, but maybe that was the point. You didn't help people because you knew what it would lead to. You helped them because they needed help. Because you were human, because that's what mattered. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, that one act of kindness became a bridge that carried not just you, but hundreds of others, across the gap between impossible and possible, between drowning and breathing, between a system that didn't care and a community that did. Naomi walked across the bridge toward the Walter Brooks Wing. On the wall was a photo of him at the shipyard, young and strong, surrounded by his union brothers. Underneath a quote, "Neighbor helping neighbor. That's how we change the world." She touched the frame gently. "We're doing it, Grandpa," she whispered. "We're really doing it." Outside, the ceremony continued. Students mingled with community members. Families explored the center. Children ran across the bridge, their laughter echoing. And Naomi stood there, 27 years old, a registered nurse director of a program that was changing lives, and thought about how far she'd come. From a girl counting pills and pennies to a woman building bridges, all because one stormy night she'd refused to walk past someone who needed help. Sometimes that's all it took. One choice, one person, one moment of caring when it would have been easier not to. And everything changed.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.